Hello everybody, my name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to today's show. We have a good one for you as always on the show today. I'm going to give you the latest on all things to do with Gaza, of course, as Jabalia now under attack and general broad penetration and bombing at this point from Israeli troops that we will keep you up to date on. Meanwhile, Boeing may be prosecuted for federal charges after they violated an agreement they had previously made with the federal government. This is as more and more whistleblowers are coming forward about misconduct in the organization after the, let's just say the death of two of them. Also, a really crazy and pretty harrowing story out of Gaza with an American medical mission trapped there. A resolution has been found with that story, and it is really just as heartbreaking and really tragic and messy, I guess you would say, as the whole conflict itself. Really, really bad polls for Joe Biden as Trump leads in all 5 swing states at this point. Also, some interviews that we can try and get to if we have time, the New York Times did, with some swing voters as to why they changed their mind. And we have Barack Ravid and others concerning trolling and really weaponizing anti-Semitism with regards to a Washington Post story about Eric Adams and Colombia. All right, so we get started with the latest on the war on Gaza, where Israel's military has intensified its bombardment of Jabalia camp, which is in the kind of north-central region, or actually just the central region, with at least 6 people reported to be killed and many wounded. This is as they're, mostly operating kind of on the eastern border of the Gaza Strip at this point. This is where the largest Israeli troops groups are. And, of course, that is where we are seeing, and this is also, coming in Jabalia as well. This is where we're also seeing some of the increasing numbers of successful Hamas insurgent attacks back on the IDF here. So, again, it's really important to remember, and I think a lot of people get this used because, Hamas has attacked civilians many times in the past, and they have committed atrocities towards civilians in the past, but this is an army that is defending its not only itself but its people. The same rules apply to it as they do to Israel, and they are continuing to make a dent. It's not a very big dent. No one's saying it's a very big dent, but it is bigger than what a lot of people expected. On the legal front, though, Israel's lawyers have argued the United Nations top court the country has the right to move ahead with a full-scale offensive on Gaza on Rafah in southern Gaza. So this is, as there has been a fight to stop that from the South African side as well. Thousands of Palestinian civilians in northern Gaza are cut off from water and food after a week-long Israeli incursion that has led to heavy casualties on both sides, I think, which is pretty important to say here. And I think that's kind of the most important thing, is the northern Gaza Jabalia refugee camp has been pretty much the biggest center of fighting in recent days and currently. On Monday, the forces and tanks re-entered northern Gaza. This is after they, again, maintained that they had reclaimed operational control, and Hamas really did respond in a pretty big way as fighters were engaged in gun battles with Israeli forces in the east of Jabalia and east of Rafah in southern Gaza, they say. In a series of statements on a Telegram channel, Qassam Brigade said one of its snipers shot an Israeli soldier in Jabalia. The group said its fighters targeted an Israeli army bulldozer with an Al-Yassin 105 shell east of Jabalia. Earlier on Monday, the group said its fighters attacked a crowd of Israeli soldiers with mortar shells inside the Jabalia refugee camp, the biggest refugee camp in northern Gaza. So this is which one is, as we can see from the videos at this point, it looks almost like a ghost town. You can imagine there is some people, some civilians nearby, but as we know, many of them, at least half the population is in the Rafah, city limits itself. So it is, it's a really serious situation. Of course, that means the northern parts are less deserted or more deserted, which is interesting because that makes it easier for Hamas to operate, which kind of goes against the civilian striking kind of canard that we see time and time again. So the armed wing of Palestinian Islamic Jihad said its fighters fired mortars at Israeli forces massing on the Palestinian side of the crossing. Israeli forces seized the Palestinian side of the crossing last week, and with some of those intense fighting for weeks taking place on both northern and southern edges of Gaza. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have already again taken flight in aid groups. More than an already dire humanitarian crisis could sharply worsen. So the resistance here to this, both in the courts with the International Court of Justice and the South African effort to try and put a damper on this Rafah invasion, and the fighting in Jabalia are going to be very, very interesting to watch, as an estimated 630,000 people have fled Israel's attacks in Rafah in the past week, and another 100,000 in Gaza's north. At least 35,000 people have been killed. Meanwhile, we have Boeing, and the new story out from the AP and the Justice Department really at the moment is the Justice Department has determined that Boeing has violated corporate probation for deceiving federal regulators. But according to Dave Koenig, who was really on the story for the AP for quite a long time and wrote the original story on this, he says that it does not necessarily mean federal prosecutors will revive criminal charges against the giant aircraft manufacturer. And this is, at least in this particular context, because, as I'm sure many, many people know, there has been a, continuing story about these two now whistleblowers that have been straight up murdered. And there's really just has been awful, negligence, supportive, really criminal negligence on this, because they essentially, we've talked about it before on the show, where they essentially put spare parts, that are defective into a pile that they're supposed to account for, and they're supposed to keep separate from everything else. That part, spare parts are missing. There was just another plane that engine exploded in midair that had to make an emergency landing in Indonesia. That was a Boeing plane. They are really, things are coming to light about the nature of their operation that have been, hidden in almost plain sight for a long time. But essentially, the Justice Department says that Boeing failed to meet the terms of the settlement. The settlement, they're on probation. This was from the crashes that happened in Indonesia in 2018 and Ethiopia in 2019. It killed a total of 346 people. After the second one, the Justice Department investigated how Boeing convinced the Federal Aviation Authority to certify the 737 MAX. Prosecutors determined Boeing committed fraud against the United States by deceiving the FAA about elements of a key flight control system that was implicated in the crashes. That was, the settlement that they had to be on. Required the company to set up and maintain a program to detect and prevent violations of U.S. anti-fraud laws. Notably, the government did not say whether Boeing actually committed any acts of fraud. So, this program here is what seems to have been at fault. Perhaps they, surprise, weren't doing the best job of monitoring themselves. So we will find whether or not they're back in court in a few weeks' time. Before we move on, just want to give a quick note about our new membership option. You can sign up now for a reduced price, just about $3 a month. Price of cup of coffee, a month. A cheap cup of coffee, maybe not in Starbucks if you're boycotting, a month to get into some more fun episodes that we're planning on doing. Less stuff about the news, day-to-day headlines, more stuff about bigger topics, more fun stuff, more breaking down of other media, reacting to things, and, essentially just doing content that is more freeing and just better, and going one layer beyond the headlines that we are always so caught up in on this show, with one extra episode per week. So please sign up, and then once we have a kind of critical mass, we'll try and start doing something like that. You can do that in the link in the description of this episode. Okay, so we go now to our next story, and it's really a pretty crazy situation. We have the American medical mission has been trapped at the moment in Gaza. So this was kind of an out of date story. But to give you the context, we have the context here from The Intercept, and we have Ryan Grimm and Hin Hudari from Gaza reporting on this really cool kind of collaboration of The Intercept. And a big shout out to the work of Ryan Grimm, Jeremy Scahill. Upward of 20 American doctors and medical workers are trapped in Gaza as a result of Israel's post-invasion closure of the Rafah border crossing into Egypt. So not like, again, that there are Israeli tanks guarding these American doctors, but there are Israeli tanks guarding the border that they are supposed to leave under. Israel has blocked fuel, food, water from entering Rafah for over a week, leading to severe dehydration among the general population as well as among doctors on mission. Relatives of doctors were told by the State Department that rescue efforts were underway, including through coordination with the United Nations and the Israeli Defense Forces. Yet on Monday, the IDF fired on a UN vehicle that was traveling to the European hospital in Khan Yunis near Rafah, killing a UN employee who was an Indian national and injuring another. And again, it's almost like a joke it's stupid to think about, ask the question, what would happen if an American national was killed in this war by the IDF, because we already know what would happen. It's in the World Central Kitchen situation. There was an American national who was killed, and it was essentially largely swept under the rug. We had a few weeks of condemnation and things must change from the Israeli government, but then something else happened, a new outrage, and this never-ending media saga really happened, and their consternation kind of went away. There were some strong words at the moment, but strong words was about it. A family member of one of the doctors stranded at the European hospital said he suspected the vehicle was part of a rescue mission, but was uncertain. We are aware that a car that is similarly supposed to be their rescue passage was shot at, and this would be a pretty crazy allegation here. Again, not something that is impossible, but that it was this car that was shot at by the Israelis on Monday that killed an Indian national that was going to pick up the American doctors and take them to the border. We are aware that there is an active shelling around the hospital, and the staff have been told to stay away from the windows, said this relative. So pretty much it's a pretty dire situation, but the representative in the Senate of at least one of the doctors, Dr. Hamawi, Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, Israel has offered to evacuate him after Duckworth's urging and after they, very likely shot at one of the cars, the UN sent cars, that was sent to pick him and his American and I believe British nationals, sent to pick them up and killed one Indian national. They are now offering to, according to Ryan Grimm, who worked on the story for The Intercept, they're offering to evacuate Dr. Hamawi after Tammy Duckworth's urging, but Hamawi refused, insisting on staying with his patients. 5 volunteers accepted the offer. He sent the comment through a colleague. There is a palpable gloom and foreboding that has set in at the hospital. The children and staff are asking for everyone by name. All the Americans and Brits left. That can't be a good sign. The medical missions rotate in and out every 2 weeks. The missions have insisted that they not be evacuated until the new rotation is able to come in. Israel is refusing. More than a dozen international medical workers remain at the hospital. So really incredible stuff, and incredible bravery going on to the point of this doctor here, Dr. Hamawi, which is, really has been a subject of a grand international effort to get him out of Gaza. He's saying, no, I'm staying in. The new mission isn't here yet. I'm not going to let these people be unprotected. And he does have a point, because we have seen time and time again, when there are foreign doctors there, especially American and British doctors, Israel is less likely to strike the hospital. One of the biggest things that people from Al-Shifa Hospital report is that when this turned up, when the second siege took place, there was no Americans. They had just been evacuated, and things essentially went ahead. And Hamawi and his colleagues, although fair enough to the people who, did evacuate Gaza and went when they had the opportunity to. But these people, incredibly brave people, are saying, we are going to stay. 5 staff were evacuated, but Hamawi refused to go, leaving his body on the line to defend and treat his patients. He's effectively saying, if they're going to kill everyone in the hospital, they'll have to kill him too. And hopefully he survives. Hopefully he was able to get out and tell his tale. And, it is kind of an awful thing to say because it shouldn't be the first priority of concern, but if Israel does end up going on and sieging this hospital, which it is very possible they can do, and it's something that they've shown a strong desire to do to many, many hospitals, and have done to many, many hospitals in the past, it would really be, I think, a big, big turning point to have his story as an American who's going to be interviewed in all these TV stations of his time in Gaza in a hospital that was being besieged by the Israelis. I think that'll be a very, very big deal. But, hopefully that never happens and he is able to continue unabated with saving lives. All right. We have gone ahead and gotten a big new snapshot, a big new insight into the 2024 U.S. presidential election at the moment. With Donald Trump leading in 5 key swing states as young and non-white voters express discontent with Biden. And this is, again, for all the people who think that Gaza is just a political nothing and nobody cares, and it's not going to be a big deal, and it's not going to be affecting the base. The base is going to turn around. This is essentially what the election is going to be decided on, is can they, by some miracle, get this base to forget about the genocide they're committing. Let's be real here. They are funding the arms for here. Are they going to get this base to forget about the genocide in time for November? It would be a political, really feat of heavy lifting, and it will only be possible because Donald Trump's the opponent, and abortion rights, democracy, whatever, all that stuff is on the line. But these polls really do show that it has not happened yet, if it will ever happen at all, which personally I think is far less likely if it happening of, people snapping to and just falling in line behind Joe Biden because Donald Trump is so bad. It is far less likely to happen than it is. I would put a wager. But again, everything is possible here. This is from Nate Cohn. Donald Trump leads Biden in 5 crucial battlegrounds. A new set of polls shows as a yearning for change and discontent over the economy and the war in Gaza among young, black, and Hispanic voters threaten to unravel the president's Democratic coalition. There's going to be a lot of people, probably who say, oh, Biden was really not popular with young people already for the economy. It's not Gaza. But I think you can really point to the poll numbers when a big chunk of the base just falls off a cliff, and you can see when it happens, and it's around November of 2023. You can go back and look at the averages. You can go back to the swing state averages, look back to that first December 2023 times he had a poll that really woke people up to the nature of this problem. But the surveys were done by NYT, Siena College, and Philadelphia Inquirer, found that Trump was ahead among Biden, and it is brutal. The race was closer among likely voters as Trump led in 5 states, but Trump was ahead in 5 of 6 among registered voters, 5 of 6 key states. Among registered voters, Trump led in 5 states as well, but Biden edged ahead in Michigan while trailing only narrowly in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. So we can go through here. In Arizona, the difference I think we should probably, we could go likely voters because likely voters are, again, more likely to vote. So Arizona, Trump is up by 6, which is, to put in perspective, Biden won by 2. And I encourage you to go look at how the Senate race is going for the Democrats and make your comparisons to Biden as the candidate. Georgia, Trump is up by 9. Remember how close that was last time. 9 is absolutely stunning. This is, again, not just registered voters, likely voters. And if Trump turns out more registered voters, it's better for him. And, the less people vote, the better it's going to be for Joe Biden here. I think we're seeing that quite clearly. Michigan is probably going to be one of the most important and closest states. Biden is up among likelies by 1 point there. It is narrow, thin. and that is when you're going to probably have Gaza playing the biggest role with the Arab American community. We also saw, Wisconsin have a big uncommitted vote. Nevada here, this is shocking, absolutely shocking. This is a 12-point, 51 to, or I'm actually doing the math wrong here. It's a 13-point gap in Nevada. That is a place where, I think there should be a lot more coverage expeditiously, because Joe Biden won that comfortably. By 2-3 points, pretty easy last time. It was not something that was really in doubt. Pennsylvania, another critical state, 48 to 45. Trump is on top. And Wisconsin, 47 to 46. Trump is on top there as well. So it is a absolutely stunning turn for Joe Biden. There really is no way to spend this, and it's something that they have shown to be proving pretty accurately. The question is here, are they factoring in the voters who very well could come to Biden with some of the right-wing extremism, or are they not? Because we have had, over the course of the last 2-3 election cycles, of the Trump era and the transition to the COVID era and all that, we have had the battle between the turnout of the very motivated Democrats and the very motivated Republicans. And in recent years, the Republicans' motivation have been underestimated, first because of the fact that there was a lot of non-college educated white people who a lot of people assume as not typically voting, and people who really just generally had not voted for in the past that had come out to vote for Trump in record numbers. That's why higher turnout is going to favor him here. But then what Biden has going for him is, if those people get disengaged, the people who are going to be the most engaged are the more college-educated, suburban white voters who are going to be the most likely to flock to Biden, with regards to lines like democracy on the line, January 6th, abortion rights, things like that, and just general programming of a kind of anti-Republican extremism. And the question is, how much of this poll is factoring in how much of those two factors? How are they weighing those two different dynamics? Because in 2022, 2022, the big miss was that a lot of people missed that Democratic side. And so the Democrats did a lot better because a lot of people just repulsed with Trump's extremism and the Republican Party's extremism with regards to critical race theory and all that craziness. So, and just always talking about, trans rights and, Blake Masters and all that weirdness. But you can see, how those down ballot races, I think this is why I think this is a more dead on accurate poll. We can see how those down ballot races are playing out as well. And all those, not just with the New York Times, they have Democrats doing, 5 to 6 points at a minimum better than Biden. This is the other Senate candidates. So it is really, really clear that right-wing extremism, repulsiveness dynamic that the right wing I think is still giving off, that is showing up, but it's showing up in the down ballot races on the top of the ticket. It is showing up incredibly toxically for Biden, and he is losing in a lot of these swing states where Democrats are otherwise doing quite well. And then kind of go through here, it is a little bit of a weird dichotomy because a lot of the people in the polls say they want a return to normalcy, but they also want things to change. I guess they want things to change fundamentally back to normal. But I think really what they want, people want to feel like their lives are secure. They want to feel like their lives are stable. And I feel like they think under Biden, I think a lot of it was more priced in under Donald Trump. But under Joe Biden, when things were supposed to be the competent adult in the room after a crazy situation like Trump, who is going to come in and bring things under control, and he has not done that, it has been probably his most devastating thing yet. And a big thing they talk about here is the economy and really how it is affecting all these key groups among various battleground states. So the sense that Biden would do little to improve the nation's fortunes has helped erode his standing among young, Black, and Hispanic voters who usually represent the foundation of any Democratic path to the presidency. So I think Gaza plays a very big role with the situation going on with young voters and black voters probably primarily, and obviously Arab voters as well. But I think you cannot really put that with the Latino community as well. But also, it's always a fool's errand to try and lump everyone in the Latino community together. But I think that, especially in the context of Nevada, is going to be incredibly important to look into. I think it really is just a sign that it's not just race as a get-out-of-jail-free card for Democrats in the way that they, for a long time, the Biden administration maybe thought that it was going to be. And when you have an economy that is, think about a lot of the people who, for example, voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary. That's the core of the Democratic base in Nevada. And they're, workers in and around Las Vegas, in, the casino and hospitality areas. Like, those are people who have probably been brutalized by the cost of living over the last 2 years. And they and many other people are seeing a message from Joe Biden that just does not fit with reality. I mean, you could point to the gains that we see and the inflation going down and the interest rates, I think you should be putting more pressure on Jerome Powell to, lower those interest rates. I know it's uncouth, but it's reality. It's post-Trump politics. Like, I'm sorry. But it really does make a lot of people go crazy when they look at Joe Biden and the White House saying, oh, economy's doing good, because it does not make people really at all happy, especially when it comes to an issue as important as the economy. You can, again, frame it in the fact of, okay, we're in a crisis, but we are doing everything in our power to take down and attack the people that are doing this crisis for you, which is not us. And a good kind of callback to this is, someone who was very in similar circumstances was Harry Truman in the wake of World War II, with rising prices, a lot of inflation, a lot of labor tension, things like that. And also, got a pretty, the conflict, foreign conflict, the Korean War was much more popular. But anyway, he was able to blame it all on the Congress. And I mean, I think you could do a pretty good job blaming it on the Congress. But there is a problem with the fact that there has just been two major stories. I think Matt Stiller has done great reporting on this, about food price fixing and oil price fixing. So it's like Biden being fundamentally weak, and you see this in a lot of various different respondent groups. People say he's not going to bring real change. He's not going to act tough. He's not going to be strong and be decisive in tackling our problems. He has just been unable to respond to any of the price challenges that Americans face, and it's just, pretending that everything is fine. It wouldn't be smart to just say, I hear you, I see you, we are in a really bad situation, and then just use rhetoric. You have to do actions. You have to make a fundamental stand against these companies who are doing this, who are conspiring in this way. And we see that with, the big oil producing companies and OPEC, for example. That is something the U.S. can really exert a lot of. Again, we're the most powerful country in the world. The biggest theme is with Gaza, with Biden internally, and with other issues in foreign policy, and just keeping Americans' wallets safe, really. Biden has been completely weak and also really delusional about the state of the country that he's leading. And I think that really, when it comes down to it, is the biggest reason why he is behind at the moment. So, with that being said, we're going to move on to our last story. So this came to my attention from Barak Ravid, who is well known as somebody who is kind of deeply sourced on both sides of the Benjamin Netanyahu, not really Benjamin Netanyahu, but more kind of the Benny Gantz, more liberal Israeli politics side, that kind of orbit of, you get Benny Gantz, Yair Lapid, some of the war cabinet people who are more oppositional to Netanyahu. He's very well sourced with them and with the Biden government. So he has been really kind of recognized in D.C. circles for his reporting in this Israel-Hamas, the genocide against the Palestinian people. Let's be real. And so he definitely caused a buzz in D.C. media circles when he tweeted out, this classic, concerned but also respectable pose from, a reporter. It's a classic, reporter move when they want to just, appear above it all, appear aloof, appear respectable, but they also want to say, essentially, you are really screwing up and it's getting to be embarrassing and screw you. So Washington, he just tweets it essentially with no conflict or no context. He goes, Washington Post under fire for story alleging outsized Jewish influence by donors. Emily F. Jacobs. Right. So Brock Ravid is an Axios reporter essentially sharing this hit piece by a pro-Israel outlet about the nature of this report, which is, it makes it sound like essentially they just wrote the Elders of Zion conspiracy theory about how Jews control everything. They, make all the money in the world. They're, blood-sucking vampires and all that stuff. And they're having just such bad influence on our playing into that kind of trope. So what they did right, though, and it really was kind of surprised. This is like kind of the levels that they're stooping to here. Is they're right. The Washington Post published a news story on Thursday suggesting that a group of wealthy Jewish donors used their influence to push New York City Mayor Eric Adams to send the New York Police Department into Columbia's University campus to clear out protesters. The article alleges that a group of prominent business leaders privately voicing their concerns about growing pro-Hamas sentiment and instances of anti-Semitism on college campuses in a WhatsApp group chat, quote, offer a window into how some prominent individuals have wielded their money and power in an effort to shape American views of the Gaza war, as well as the actions of academics, business, and political leaders, including New York's mayor. The group chat eventually led to this is from the article here. They talk about how they had this group chat. They were, quote unquote, raising concerns about anti-Semitism, essentially coming out and saying, someone should do something about this. Like, this is starting to be a little bit problematic. Like, we got to take some action. This is getting to be, they're just trying to do, the best they can. They're just being citizens ethically in society. And they really, frame it as it's just a very, normal ethical thing. But then we have, this is, by the way, also including the CEO of Kind Bar, which is a bit random. Daniel Loeb, billionaire Len Blavatnik, and real estate investor Joseph Sitt held a Zoom call on April 26th with Eric Adams about a week after the mayor first sent New York City police to Columbia's campus, a log of chat messages show. During the call, some attendees discussed making political donations to Adams, as well as how the chat group's members could pressure Columbia's president and trustees to permit the mayor to send police to campus to handle the protesters, essentially saying, I will bribe you to do this. Like, this is what this is. It's legalized bribery, and that's what, campaign contributions are, especially in big money, manner like this, from a private citizen or multiple private citizens, including, CEOs and billionaires, and billionaire CEOs. Like, this is clearly, and the reason why I'm reading this little excerpt from the original article is to show you, like, this is something that it's a clear example of them using their power and their ability to spend money in politics to manipulate politicians to perform an outcome that they want. And I think, the only fair thing I think would be to say that Eric Adams probably would have done this at some point anyway. Maybe it happened a little sooner because of pressure from some pretty power players in New York City and American politics, but it is something that they definitely did, and it's not, they're suggesting this. They have WhatsApp logs showing a clear connection of meetings and offers of donations, and we'll see dark money. It's tough, but we can see eventually whether these donations actually went through. This is not to use suggest as a word. Shame on whoever edited, if anyone did edit this piece for this magazine, because it is not a suggestion. It's cited evidence of WhatsApp group conversations from these people. The story claimed the group pressed Adams to send police to disperse Palestinian protests at Columbia University, though the mayor had already been openly pleading for days with Columbia University President Manoush Shafiq to allow cops on campus. So again, I think the Zoom call probably was not the first time they got in contact, and there was also a much bigger crackdown later on. So I think, again, that kind of invalidates it. And it's not a claim. I really hate this framing of, this is actual reporting that was done. Maybe it's unfamiliar. It clearly is unfamiliar to the Jewish Insider magazine here, but this was actual reporting that was done. It was cited chat logs of powerful people, and they were doing literally exactly. There's no claimed about whatever this is going on here. It's just not happening. So Fabian Levy, a spokesperson for Adams, condemned the post for the line of questioning in the first place, saying in the statement, "Let's be very clear, both times the NYPD entered Columbia University's campus on April 18th and April 30th were in response to specific written requests from Columbia University to do so. Prior to these operations, Mayor Adams consistently stated that Columbia is a private institution and assistance would be provided only upon request." Goes on to do the whole thing, is essentially restate the thesis of this article. Levy went on to condemn posts for the article's framing and language choices in a series of posts on X, writing the paper, and others can make editorial decisions, disagree with decisions by universities, to ask the NYPD to clear these unlawful encampments on campuses, for saying Jews wielded their money and power in an effort to shape American views is offensive on so many levels. And again, it's not something they're saying. It's not a case that they're arguing. They are citing clear chat logs that they've obtained through a process called reporting and journalism that show that, again, he's the one who's putting Jews in front of this here, that these individuals who are all sharing a pro-Israeli sympathies, they decided to use their money and power in an effort to shape Americans' views. That is a clear fact. I'm sorry. It's and I don't think we should be going the business of calling evidenced things anti-Semitic, because I think that really does cheapen the value of the term anti-Semitism at a time where it really should not be cheapened, which is really any time. With that being said, that's our show for tonight. We will be back on Monday. It's Newsflash.